Welcome to Glass Half Full Moon, where if we weren't hot for Jane Eyre, Full Moon Features would go out of business. Tonight's film is interesting in premise, but lacking in execution, I would say. Because it basically asks the question, what if universal monsters but little people? Gabe, do you think that's an appropriate assessment?
I think it's a little offensive, if I'm going to be honest. But, we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it.
Everything's a little offensive to somebody. But tonight's film is 1997's The Creeps. We skipped over Petticoat Planet because it was just another straight-up porn.
Yeah, no, it is just softcore porn. If anyone's curious, I scrubbed through it just to make sure. It's a cow, there's like an outlaw and like a lady sheriff, and they bang, and that's pretty much it. So you were not missing much.
Yeah, unless I guess you're into that sort of thing. But we didn't want to watch it because we already do a lot of uncomfortable things, and that's not one we want to share. But tonight's uncomfortable thing that we've done is watch The Creeps, alternately titled Deformed Monsters, because I guess that's more descriptive of what goes on here.
Yeah, I suppose so. This was a very interesting film. Needless, and without even saying that this was directed by Charles Band, and I don't know if this was a good movie.
I will say parts of it were good, but this is not the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This had potential, I would say.
This is 30 minutes of ideas stuffed into a nearly hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah. And it doesn't help that you aren't going to recognize most of the actors in this movie, except maybe Phil Fondacaro, who portrays Dracula. We've seen him previously in Meridian and in Dollman vs. Demonic Toys. And if you're not familiar with the Full Moon catalog, he was also in Tales from the Crypt's Bordello of Blood. He was in Hellraiser Bloodline, Phantasm 2, Willow, and me being the weird millennial that I am, I actually remembered him the first time I saw him in the Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen TV movie Double Double Toil and Trouble.
He looks like if Chuck Norris was a little person.
I wouldn't go that far. But he does have a very recognizable face. And he's honestly probably the best part of this movie.
He's a good actor. He's a great actor.
He did phenomenal in this role as a small Dracula.
I feel like he is up there with like Peter Dinklage of actors who are little people that their acting does. It's almost a shame because their acting does go beyond just being a stereotype.
Yes. Like, you've got Peter Dinklage, you've got Vern Troyer, and unfortunately, I don't think many people know the name Phil Fondacaro, because he's in these kind of stereotypical roles that utilize his height more than anything instead of his acting capabilities. And he didn't really get outside of the B-movie scene. Like, I think
He should have.
I think the farthest he got was Willow. And even then, Willow is very niche. But the atrocities set upon Mr. Fondacaro aside, I suppose we should get into it.
So we open up with, frankly, I'm not entirely certain what we're looking at as we open up. It's almost a title sequence.
Our movie begins with a gentleman named quote-unquote Mr. Jameson being given access to some very rare literary materials. Like, rare to the point of needing to wear gloves and a face mask while they're being handled, as any sort of skin oils or moisture could potentially damage them. As the piece in question he's looking at is Mary Shelley's handwritten original manuscript of Frankenstein, which he replaces with a fake and steals.
Okay. All right. Pause. That scene that you just described takes about 10 minutes in the movie.
Yeah. And I was able to sum it up in 30 seconds. That is the
first sign. And that is the first sign that there's a big problem with this movie. Because they linger on every single step. And it's like, oh, we're going to watch her walk all the way from the desk and then go all the way back. And then, oh, no, you got to put the gloves on like this. And it's every single scene is like that because they are getting every last drop of movie out of these scenes.
Yeah, they are definitely trying to pad for time, as this movie was only about 75 minutes long.
And, so this lady, what's the lady's name?
Anna.
Anna, and we find that the jumpy fat guy is named Winston.
Winston Berber.
Winston Berber. And he gets out the original Mary Shelley transcript, and she's like, all right, cool, I trust you to be alone with this.
Yeah, no.
I guess.
For one, if this were actually a matter of handling a rare document like this, he would not be out in the open like that. They'd be in a hermetically sealed room.
No.
Obviously wearing gloves and face mask, but also having sterilized himself. Because, like, something as important as an original Shelley manuscript of Frankenstein would not be handled this carelessly.
That would be in a museum.
It would be in a museum, not in a rare books archive for people to handle willy-nilly with just some basic credentials. Because, like, the things that she needs in order to let him see the manuscript are relatively mundane. Like, a form to fill out, form of identification, a letter of annotation stating that this is the document he needs and why. That's way too simple to be able to get your hands on something this precious.
Yeah, but if that weren't the case, the movie wouldn't happen.
That is true, but because it is the case, our librarian Anna is reprimanded by her boss for letting someone handle the manuscript. And then is promptly asked out to a book reading with cheese and wine. Obviously in a romantic sense.
By her pushy lesbian boss.
Yeah.
Which I saw several people in the, or at least one person in the IMDb reviews refer to her as an Amazon, which I guess.
I guess. It's not what she ends up to be.
I guess this is representation, but I feel like there's some,
No, it's meant to be a
here.
joke. It's a joke. It's not representation.
Yeah. Oh, and then I'm pretty sure the boss is like, yeah, we keep these things here, but we're not actually supposed to show them to people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically her whole spiel. It's like...
Oh, and then she's like, oh, and also, here's a thing for you to do after hours. And just that Anna is then like, oh, I guess I'll just go and take a look at the Mary Shelley transcript. Oh, no, it's a fake.
Yeah. The fact that they didn't even bother to check it when he was done with it. Like, the cover is a decent replica, but the insides are just loose blank pages. Even a cursory glance could show that this was not the original.
And I'd be fine with this sort of nonsense if it led up to more monster action, but it really doesn't, because it takes 30 minutes for us to even get to the monster action. Yeah.
Well, with this bit of larceny, grand larceny even, I would say, due to the value of what he was taking. With this bit unfurled to Anna, she decides to go to one David Raleigh, who apparently manages a video store, but also has started working as a detective. And this is where we get another...
Moonlighting as a detective.
Moonlighting, yeah. But this is also where we get another little kind of theme of the movie, which is print media versus video media. Because one of my options for our tagline was where if we didn't watch the movie, so we wouldn't have to read the book. Which is kind of how David approaches life.
I guess that's a theme, but that would imply this movie has themes.
I'm giving it a little too much credit.
You're really trying.
I wanted to like this movie more than I did. It had potential.
It did have potential.
Yes.
But David Riley is like, hey, you want me to find this guy? Cool, I'll do that. And he's like, I'll dust this like bit of thing for fingerprints, and I'll just put them into a police database, see what we get. He's like, oh, I got it.
Apparently he has access to the National Fingerprint Database, but then he's like...
At the cost of $600.
Yeah, of her money. Which does kind of make sense, because that is something a private eye would do. It's like, I need access to the database, but because you're the one who wants me to get into it, you're the one paying for it. David here also portrays as incredibly incompetent up front. Like, he puts on a facade of stupidity as he laughs at Anna's thinly veiled insults. And I'm just sitting here like, I've known guys who were like this, who pretend to be stupid. And it's not fun to deal with.
He's only kind of likable. Only after a little bit of the movie.
And even then, I'd still pick Dracula over him. Because, holy shit, apparently David got the right guy with an overnight search of the fingerprint database.
He immediately gets the guy. And then he's like, yeah, and I can do more work. And she's like, nah. I forget the reason why she says no. Because he hasn't gotten back to her fast enough? I think that's the reason.
Well, that occurs after we move on to our thief, Winston Berber, who apparently has many of the classic monster manuscripts on hand, including Guy Endor's The Werewolf of Paris and one of Nina Wilcox Putnam's original scripts for The Mummy. Funnily enough, when I checked this movie on Wikipedia, they listed it as David Putnam's Mummy, which is one of those DK encyclopedia books from the early to mid-90s. I legitimately had to go in and edit the Wikipedia article for this movie.
Are you proud? Are you proud of yourself?
If it involves proper
You're allowed to say yes.
If it involves proper representation of a movie written by a female writer, which was not as common in the early 1900s. So, yes, give credit where credit is due.
But no, that was just kind of a scene where he's like, ooh, I'm running around, I have all these manuscripts.
Yep. And the only one he seems to be missing is the original copy of Bram Stoker's Dracula. And it is here which we jump back to the video store, as 2 weeks have passed since the original Thievery of Frankenstein, and David has no new pertinent info. And at which point Anna fires him.
But Anna fires him, and the guy who is looking to rent movies is just naming off full moon movies.
It's very...
Which I thought was very fun.
It was, because he asks for Head of the Family, and then he asks for Hideous, which is a full moon movie that's actually upcoming on our roster. So it was a little Easter egg for a coming production.
Yeah, yeah.
But as Anna goes back to work, Berber returns to the scene of the crime.
Why? Okay, I mean, I know why, but this is stupid.
He returns to the rare books annex in search of Dracula, because apparently they have it as well. And Anna immediately recognizes him, and she's just like, jail. She just keeps repeating, jail, trial, court. And I'm just like, one, that is not how you do a citizen's arrest, Anna. And two, he is not keeping his cool in the face of being confronted with his crime, as she is keeping him held at scissor point.
Scissors point, yes. And she calls David for some reason, presumably because she doesn't want to necessarily get the cops involved, because she doesn't want to be like, oh, I lost this manuscript on my own.
Yeah, because...
But while she's calling David, Winston pulls out a big old telescopic taser and just zaps her right in the back of the neck.
Yep, with a collapsible cattle prod. And then he steals the Dracula copy, and he steals Anna, apologizing to her unconscious body while also victim blaming her.
He's not a good character.
He's not. He's basically like, oh, I'm so sorry I had to do this, but you made me do it. It's basically your fault. You pushed me to this. And apparently, Anna's also going to be used as a human sacrifice, as Winston has made an archetype inducer. wanting to use it to create physical versions of these classic monsters to do his bidding so he can have real power to rule the world. His words, not mine.
You know, I could do a lot of questioning with this. I really could.
We probably should.
But that, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck, honestly.
Yeah, if we were to question these things more than we do, our brains would probably leak out our ears. And I'm already lacking brain cells. I don't want to lose any more. Like, I might...
The point is that Full Moon Features puts less thought into their movies than I do into my D&D games.
Yes, this is very true. This is incredibly true. Full Moon puts less thought into their movies than I do baking something for my husband's office potluck.
But let's not get too caught up on it.
I guess.
But I will say that this is basically the plot of Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that. I did not even think about that.
This is very much that same plot of taking things from monsters and making the monsters real. Except Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed is an infinitely better film.
Yeah, this could definitely have used some Matthew Lillard chewing the scenery. But I think everything's made better with Matthew Lillard.
But so they're doing this thing. This is a ritual to make the monsters real.
Yeah.
And as he's doing the ritual, David just shows up and is like, yeah, I got the name of this warehouse from something, whatever, don't ask too many questions. And he zaps Winston. They escape and take the manuscripts with them. And some part of this, or combination of ruining the ritual, taking the sacrifice, and or the manuscripts, results in having the monsters come out as small humans.
Yeah. David basically punches out Winston. They take back the manuscripts, and the archetype inducer spits out half-sized movie monsters 30 minutes into the 75-minute movie.
We are 30 minutes into this movie, and we are only just now getting the title monsters.
I will say the practical effects, like the costuming on the monsters themselves, is good. It works well, considering that...
Except for Wolfman.
Wolfman could be better. He looks a bit more like Warwick Davis as the leprechaun with rabies.
It's not... I will say, there's a lot of bad in this movie, but weirdly enough, the movie is shot very well. And a lot of the, props and costuming is very good.
The production values aren't
good,
the problem.
It's pretty good.
The production values aren't the problem here.
But no, we get our tiny monsters, finally. And...
with Dracula as the leader of the troupe. Because I'm pretty sure Phil Fondacaro had the acting chops to do it.
I don't know if he's doing a good accent, but then again, I don't know if this movie deserves it.
He does well with what he's given.
Fair enough. But now Winston is explaining what exactly it is that he did. Explaining oh yeah, you guys are fictional characters and I've brought you into reality. And your thoughts and previous dreams are, just fictional. And, and I forgot, there is a scene of David and Anna driving back. And is like, I used to have
David's a boyfriend.
Like hitting on her.
Yeah. I used to have a boyfriend, and then I found out his favorite author was Ayn Rand.
God, I love it. It's the best line of the movie.
It is. It is definitely the best line of this movie. But yeah.
No, he's kind of explaining oh, you're small because we didn't finish the ritual. And they're like, well, let's get her back.
Yep, because apparently he needs Anna to get the monsters to their full size. As Anna goes to return the manuscripts to the library, and her boss flirts with her more. And then goes and fondles a copy of Jane Eyre to her bosom. She is creasing those pages, ma'am. That is a rare book.
No, not just fondling. she finishes with this book. She comes to completion with this book.
It's uncomfortable. It is incredibly uncomfortable. It would be
more uncomfortable. I didn't find it as uncomfortable as it was just so fucking weird.
Yeah, but my brain is also like, ma'am, that is an incredibly rare piece of literature that you are spreading your boob sweat all over. You are creasing all of those pages with the way you are rubbing it all over your tits.
There is like a historical defilement fetish.
I guess that makes sense, but I'm pretty sure that's...
I have vague memories of a story where a rhino wears the Shroud of Turin like a diaper.
What?
It's neither here nor there, but let's just move on.
Yeah, I don't even want to know. But
they kidnapped the lady.
Yeah, the mini monsters have kidnapped Anna's boss. Her name is Miss Christina, but it's just easier to call her Anna's boss. Because I didn't care enough about her to remember her name for the most part. But now we got boobies.
Pretty unexciting tits, I'll be honest. I wasn't very hyped for this.
Yeah, and they also play more at her sexuality, because Winston's like, oh, we need a woman naked between the ages of 20 and 35 who's a virgin. And as Dracula's asking her these questions, like, speak plainly, meaning tell the truth.
Have you ever had sex with a man? She's like, well, you know.
Technically, I'm a virgin in that sense, because she's a lesbian. And so the mini monsters force Burbert.
They force him to do the ritual.
Yeah.
And as he's doing it, a portal opens up behind the boss and turns her into a Valkyrie.
Turns her into a Viking. Although I guess Valkyrie and Viking are kind of along the same
I'm
veins.
sorry, why?
I don't know. And then she gets vaporized
sorry, but why,
away.
Though? Is that another gay joke that we're not from that era, so we don't get it?
I don't know. I don't know. But it's obvious that this particular naked young virgin woman did not work. And the mini monsters decide to go and look for Anna, with Frankenstein and the mummy going back to the library, and the Wolfman and Dracula going to... Is it David's or Anna's house? Because wherever they end up, David is there.
I think it's his house, because he needs to leave to go find Anna.
Yeah, but he's basically like, I'm not going to tell you where she is. Dracula's like, oh, you'll tell me when I peer into your thoughts. And David pulls a silver cross up from around his neck that I guess was hiding under his shirt. And Dracula's like, it's a cross. And David says, thank God I'm Catholic.
That's pretty good. I won't lie. That is pretty good.
I will admit, it definitely got a chuckle out of me. And I just keep writing in my notes, Phil Fondacaro does a very good job as Little Dracula. While this is going on, and of course David goes to warn Anna, and basically Drac and the Wolfman pull a Cape Fear and hitch on the back of his car.
Yeah, that was a weird one.
Yeah. While Anna is accosted at her workplace by Tiny Frank and Tiny Mummy. Or I guess Foot High Frank and Mini Mummy.
Tiny Frankenstein, Tiny Frank and Tiny Mummy are not... They're underutilized.
They are. Especially because, like, you can tell there was definitely a lot of work put into their makeup.
Right.
Because, I mean, like, they're not your stereotypical costumes. Like, it's pretty indicative of the previous Universal movie iterations in terms of their portrayal, just scaled down. So they basically, in a sense, kind of recreated those classic movie makeups just with different proportions, which is kind of tough to do.
Yeah, they did. All things considered, it's pretty decent. Pretty
good makeup job for our mini monsters. And then we get about a 5-minute long chase scene throughout the library with Foot High Frank and Mini Mummy chasing after Anna, at which some point she takes off her shirt.
I think she steps on something that hurts her foot.
Oh, she steps on broken glass?
She takes off the... Right.
Okay, so she used her shirt to wrap her bloody foot.
Yes.
Okay.
Which apparently I did look at the trivia for this movie, and the only thing that really was there was basically it said that this actress was asked to do nude scenes and she refused to do them.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot in regards to this movie. I tried to do some digging myself, like, why did it have an alternate title? What were some production stories? I tried to look, I couldn't find anything.
I mean, sometimes these movies just end up being forgotten.
Yeah. And it doesn't help with the way that Full Moon pumps out stuff so quickly. There's probably not a whole lot of time to even put down anything in regards to, like, stories on how things get made or why things are the way they are, because they just keep having to push to the next movie.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of the upsides for working for Charles Band is you're always going to have work to do.
At least you'll get paid something.
At least the work will be consistent and you'll get paid something. Maybe $2,000
no,
a script.
They're running around. Oh. But no, they're just kind of running around. They are eventually David shows up and is like, oh yeah, and man, dude, I'm just kind of not remembering this great.
David shows up at Anna's workplace, and of course, the first thing he asks is, where did your shirt go? And they find themselves surrounded on all sides by our mini monsters, with Winston coming up from behind. And it is at this point that we realize that Berber is now minion to the mini monsters, as they're too powerful and strong-willed to obey him. And he's not too happy about that.
No. It seems that Winston's plan is failing spectacularly.
Yeah, it's not going his way.
But then they're all taken back to the laboratory.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, let's do this thing.
But it is at this point
weird.
It is at this point that Dracula is like, we have the girl. If this doesn't work, we don't have any other shots. What can we do to increase our chance of success? And Berber is basically like, well, we have a naked female who's not a virgin. The only thing that we can do to balance it out to ensure success is to have a not naked man who is a virgin. And of course they gotta play, and it turns out that David is exactly the criteria.
Here's the thing. Coming off of Head of the Family, where we did have a scenario similar to this, where our protagonists were all tied up by the bad guys and stuff. But in that movie, they were actually kind of clever with how they handled their bargaining chips and all that kind of stuff. In this one, they're just fucking stupid.
Yeah, because as David and Anna are tied up getting ready for the ritual to begin, and Anna tries to sway the mini monsters into letting them go via a whole monologue like, legends don't die if they're on paper, but you die if you're flesh. And the actress who portrays Anna is terrible. Her line deliveries are she's so bad.
She's not great.
She's not good at all. It's like someone was holding up a script for her to read and she was reading off of it. Almost like Marlon Brando in The Island of Dr. Moreau. Yeah,
kind of. That's a little bit... that's obviously an extreme example.
A bit of a deep cut.
But she makes her point, and then they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then the other point she makes is like, oh, well, why is Winston still helping you? What does he get out of this? You're probably just going to kill him afterwards.
Yeah.
And then he's like, aha, but if I complete my thing, I'll have full control over them. And then he locks them in the thing, and they're about to do the sacrifice. And
David manages to get them out.
And David said, like, if you hold your arms in the right way, you can make them think they're tying you up very tightly, but in reality they aren't. And then he just kind of slips his wrists out of it. And
another little example of him feigning incompetence.
I guess, yeah, you know what? Okay, sure. I guess that's a consistent character thing.
Well, Winston attempts to go through with the ritual, and as the portal opens back up, Viking Anna's boss comes through, waxing operatic, and pulls him into the portal.
Right.
And that's the end of Winston.
Yeah, that's just kind of the end of that.
But it also, yeah, it seems Anna's little spiel worked on them, because Dracula has them open the portal again to send himself and the other mini-monsters back to the realm they're from, as legends never die, and he finishes up with, like, we will always be with you in your nightmares. And I'm just like, they ripped that from E.T.
And that's when I wrote in the last note I have here is, oh, that problem just kind of cleaned itself up.
Yep. And our movie ends as book nerd and movie nerd get together, as Anna gifts him a first edition English language copy of Venus in Furs, which he's like, I've never read the book, but I've seen the movie. And the film ends with a kiss, and that's where our credits roll.
Casey.
Yes.
Do you want to hear a review of this movie?
I could say no, but you're going to read it anyway.
10 out of 10. Funniest movie I have ever seen. I have seen such movies as Caddyshack and Austin Powers, but that kind of humor doesn't even compare to that of The Creeps. The director must have only spent $10 on the film because the werewolf's makeup looks like someone just came out of a sulfuric acid accident. The film is highly recommended because it is just the bomb, so see for yourself. Do you agree with this man's review?
I don't think that was a real person.
No, it wasn't? Okay.
I don't think that was a person who wrote that. Or at least if it was, they were not sincere. That has to be a joke review.
That does, yeah.
That cannot be a...
It was difficult for me to find a genuine kind of high bar review for this.
Yeah, that had to be sarcastic.
The other one calls it a politically incorrect gem, which I think is probably more real.
Yeah, I still stand by my statement that this was a fun premise. This could have been a fun movie in different hands with maybe some different lead actors, but I would not replace Phil Fondacaro as Dracula. He carried this movie on his small shoulders.
Each of the monsters needed more screen time.
Yes, I would agree to that.
It really just felt like
it was the Dracula show.
There really could have just been Dracula. Yeah. If you're going to do the premise of, oh, we're going to have little people as our classic movie monsters, go for it. Just have the scene where, the mummy is like reading ancient Egyptian stuff and is like, oh, I got that one wrong. And they got that one wrong. You do the classic thing of like, monsters being brought into the real world. And also, there's so much you could have done with this.
Yeah, it's like Frankenstein being afraid of fire. Like, the Frankenstein's monster being afraid of fire is such a huge thing. They could have played with that.
They do almost nothing with the actual lore of these monsters.
It's the only time their lore is ever mentioned is during the little mini monologue that Drac has when he has memories of his exploits of fictions and knowledge of his fellow monsters. It's the only time their lore is ever touched upon.
It really feels like Charles Band saw like a little person dressed as Dracula like for Halloween one year and was like, hey, that's fucking funny. Make a movie out of that. And that's about as far as it got.
Yeah. You're not wrong, probably. At this point, I don't know where the ideas come from. Maybe a random internet generator.
Would you actually want to see these monsters again in any kind of a crossover?
Is it bad that I almost want to see them go against the puppets from Puppet Master?
We can't just say the puppets from Puppet Master for every single one of these.
Why? But it works.
even though you're right, we can't say it every time.
Maybe Tiny Drac versus Radu from Subspecies?
Okay, no, actually, that would be great. Oh, no. What was the guy from Vampire Journals?
Ash or Zachary?
The Zachary. Zachary needs to hunt down Tiny Dracula.
No, you know who needs to hunt down Tiny Dracula? Professor Popescu.
Okay.
Professor Popescu from Subspecies.
There's the... It's like a Abbott and Costello meets the Wolfman, but it's Professor Popescu meets Tiny Dracula.
Yes. With his palinka.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess last off, would you recommend this movie to anyone?
I would only recommend it if there were changes made, and that's not going to happen. I guess maybe watch it if you're bored. Watch it if you're drunk. Watch it if you want to see a good performance from Phil Fondacaro. But if you're gonna want stuff from him, there are other movies you can go watch.
I'm just gonna straight up say, don't fucking watch it.
Yeah.
Don't watch it. You don't need to watch it. But we need to watch it, and we need to watch something else next time. Casey, what are we watching next time?
We actually already talked about what we're watching next time, because up next is Hideous. Another Hideous with an exclamation point. Another 97 horror comedy that Charles Band pulled out of his hat.
Yeah, he pulled it out of somewhere.
I'm gonna be nice and say he pulled it out of his hat.
But you know, that's for another day.
That's for another
I
lifetime.
Say, if you really want to like have your sexual awakening by rubbing valuable manuscripts all over your body, go ahead. I'm not going to kink shame.
I'm going to kink shame.
But beyond that, I hope everyone has an absolutely horrible evening.
Bye.
Goodbye.